So good morning. Good morning and welcome to our panel, which will be discussing the development market here in Serbia and also maybe a little bit on investment, leasing, and opportunities for foreign and local investors. My name is Craig Smith from Europa Property, and we cover the region here with our magazines and events, and also Southeastern Europe, Central Eastern Europe, Russia, CIS. I think to get the panel going, I'd just like each of the panelists to introduce themselves and maybe say a few words about what they're doing here and the companies that they're representing. Milica, maybe we'll start with you since you're the woman in the group, and ladies first. Yeah. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
My name is Milica Nikolic. I work in CBS International, which is a part of CBRE, affiliate of CBRE. I run the office department. Mm-hmm. So that's, let's say, specializes in office leases and sales in Belgrade mostly, but okay. Let's say Serbia.
Hello, my name is Boško Tomašević. I am director of the agency department for Jones Lang LaSalle, and from Belgrade we also cover Bulgaria, Macedonia, Montenegro, and of course Serbia. And my role is basically to overlook the entire agency department, including office, retail, logistic, and somewhat residential in the future. So.
Hello, my name is George Pavkovic. I'm executive director of Hausmeister. Hausmeister is dealing with property and facility management, one of the leader, if not the leader, on the Serbian market. We are part of the Austrian Rustler Group that is present a part of Serbia and Austria and in other 6 countries of Central Eastern Europe.
Hi, my name is Luke Dawson. I'm the Regional Managing Director for Colliers International and also the Managing Director for the Serbian business here. We are active on this market for over 10 years, and then I also oversee Croatia, Bulgaria, Albania, Montenegro, and Greece.
Okay, great. We'll probably try to run this a little bit more like a discussion panel than just doing presentations. So, of course, if you have any questions during the panel, please feel free to raise your hands. We've got microphones and everything here, so just obviously wait to get the microphone, but feel free to jump in. We've got 3 agencies and facilities and property management companies, so a lot of great services here, and quite interesting to see how it's what they're working on. I think maybe Luke, we'll start with you. How do you see? Let's start with actually the whole panel, and I think we'll start with an investment side, because I think it'll be kind of one of the shortest parts and one of the shortest discussions. But I think it's also an important part and how you see it going. So, what, if any, are there any opportunities for big international investors to come in? What are the opportunities for local investors, and is there some medium ground there?
Okay, well, I'll start on the international investor side because that's the one that most people are interested in and is obviously the most important market indicator. What we're seeing right now is that there is some interest. You're not getting necessarily the big funds that are active in Poland and Czech Republic yet. We are seeing some interest from kind of your secondary international investors coming from Greece, coming still from Israel, and a few other outside ones from Austria, etc. But really, the difficulty we're facing is, first of all, product. There's not a surplus of product on the market, and when you dig into it, the product that the investors on the international side are interested in is actually performing fairly well in Serbia. They're well let, they have good rental levels, good tenants, etc. And the investors that are coming into the market when they come to Serbia are really looking for a discount price. So they're comparing us to Czech Republic, Romania, Bulgaria, and for them to come to Serbia, they're expecting to get a premium on the yield. And the real issue is that the owners of these properties here don't necessarily need to sell, they don't want to sell, they're getting good cash returns out of the buildings. So you've got a price gap that still exists in the market. We feel that it's going to change and there will be some transactions, but it's just more an education process with the international investors of getting them more familiar with Serbia. A lot of them have never even been here, let alone bought a building here or owned anything. So it takes some time for them to get get comfortable with the market, understand the dynamics, and get over a lot of kind of the fear in this market around what's going to happen with rents, what's going to happen with politics, the economy, et cetera. So I do believe in the future of investment here on the international side. I think that we'll see some major transactions, say, within the next 24 months in terms of real office buildings being sold or shopping centers, et cetera. But the challenge now is finding buyers that are willing to step in. On the more local side or regional side, there's transactions that are happening. The size is typically smaller. You're looking kind of 5 million euros to anywhere up to 12 to 15 million euros. But again, it's not easy because the market's not necessarily transparent in terms of who's willing to sell, what they're willing to sell at, even in terms of the education of how to sell a building. So a lot of the smaller deals that are happening are much more relationship based, where it's someone knows somebody and they want to buy something, and it's kind of typically done hand to hand. I think that will change as the market kind of evolves, and hopefully we're able to kind of educate some of the people that want to sell and how best to package your property to sell, and then we can take it to a wider audience. So I believe long-term and even mid-term in the investment market here, I think it's untapped when you compare it to a lot of the neighboring countries, which is the best comparison. We have a lot of properties that I think are quality. We have a lot of good tenants, and I think we've got a good story. But at this point, it's almost a waiting game.
Boško, do you have any?
No, really, I think Luke covered most of it basically, and we also very positive that the real institutional developers will come in the 2 years from today probably, and I think the whole thing depends a lot on the European integration, and hopefully this will happen very soon. We are hoping next 10 days we'll get this EU date, and then we believe that we will become more attractive for international developers.
I know there's a few comments about the date or the year. What is your prediction for the year that this will happen? I know it's coming in 10 days, so maybe we'll ask the whole panel. What expectations do you have?
Well, I hope that we get this date in 10 days from today, and hopefully, next 4 to 6 years we can be a full member of the EU. So.
Luke, is that, or George, is that sort of your expectation as well, or? No comments?
It's a really difficult question, so I really would pass my comment.
Okay. So George, on the as you're the only property management and facility management company here, and I understand you're doing everything is with clients, right? It's all third party. So how is the market now? Is it developing? Are you doing mainly for manufacturing, office, warehouse? Where do your skills, let's say, core business lie?
Well, let's say that our core business are in general office buildings, so the buildings that are built for the purpose of renting to the exterior clients. So in general we are managing the property in the name of the owner, and since, let's say, we are looking at this topic from some other perspective than all my colleagues here, what can I tell you from some recent developments, let's say last 6 months, since we are covering also with our services most of the buildings that my colleagues also are dealing with them as leasing agents. I can tell you that some movements are visible. There are a lot of new clients entering. Let's say, I know on our buildings at least some 10,000 square meters are filled, which were empty for some years. So from our point of view, movements are visible. Let's say, I hope that this will continue to grow. What is also important to say that unfortunately the top quality, let's say A-class building regarding the construction and also the location, we have a lack of this in Belgrade, especially if we are expecting some new big clients that will come, that they need some really big surfaces, 1,000, 2,000 square meters, let's say, in one piece. The offer on the market is really low.
Right. Okay. And why is that? What is, let's say, stopping developers from coming, or what is, let's say, demotivating developers from coming and building these kind of properties?
Well, I don't. I'm sure that the most important demotivation factor for, let's say, it's for sure this economic crisis we have for last 3-4 years, and some uncertainty that is still existing on our market. I mean, all the buildings that are here are built, let's say, maybe 2-3 years ago. Unfortunately, due to the crisis also on this, let's say, tenant market, the clients, they didn't have any opportunity to think differently, so they were trying to fill the empty spaces just, independently on possible opportunities in the future. So a lot of these interesting spaces are cut in several pieces because, it was important even to put in some client that has 100 square meters, 200 square meters, and now when some new client is coming, for example, like OEBS or OSCE, I don't know how is it in English, for example, they didn't have any, for example, opportunity to choose the building except, for example, the Blue Center, because they were the only one that they had the possibility to give them the space in, let's say, on one floor and connected even 2 or 3 floors.
Right. Okay. Well, Milicia, this is then the question for you: is
My area.
yeah, what is the market? What are the needs? What are people? I mean, when companies are calling you saying we need space, are they calling you saying they need 500, 1,000 square meters, 2,000 square meters, or is there a market for
Let's
this?
say we've noticed that what the average transaction used to be around 300 square meters last year, it actually grew to slightly over 400. And it's not an issue to find those size spaces. It is an issue with big requests. In terms of, you asked actually about the demotivating factors for the developers. The crisis was one. Now, okay, the market is picking up. You have a lot of demand. We actually have constant demand every year, even with the crisis. I mean, we are recording the same amount of square meters, either you do the renegotiation or lease renewals or, let's say, new leases or whatever, but we do have something between 50 to 60,000 square meters each year, so that's constant. That's why we have, lower vacancy now, which, it hasn't happened for a few years now.
Is it, what, about 15% now?
Just over 13% if you take the whole stock into account. I mean, but that's with the owner occupied. It's roughly around 19% if you take only the speculative stock, which is very low. It used to be 25, 26%, taking into account only speculative stock. The big requests have an issue. But in terms of developers, I wanted to tell you that there is a problem with the paperwork still, especially the ones who would like to come to the market. I mean, I'm not talking about GTC or, Africa, Israel, and the guys who actually have a few buildings and developments. They know how it works. They know that they need at least a year to have all the paperwork ready and everything. But when you talk to the new developers coming to the market, for them it seems absolutely unrealistic. It's like, how much.
So what are some of the first problems they run into when they come here? Of course, GTC and AFI and those guys, they have their own money. They open up in a lot of different countries. So
yeah, but in terms, they are used to Serbia and the Serbian way. That's they know what they can expect if they decide to build another building. But when you have someone new coming to the market, and when you explain things like you will own the building, you will not own the land.
yeah, it's hard for international companies to deal with that.
It's absolutely amazing for them. And then you need this much time for the construction permit. Then you need this much time for the technical acceptance. Then you need time for the usage permit. Maybe it will take 2 or 3 or 4 months. The bureaucracy is very difficult, and they tend to, find it very hard to understand.
Right. So Luke and Boško, are you having the same issues with dealing with investors, or dealing with, let's say not investors anymore, dealing with developers coming onto the market, and how much access do they have to capital here as well with the banking system? Either.
I think you got a good point. One of the biggest problems is more on the financing side, and the fact that the banks right now are very tight in terms of their risk profile and what they're willing to loan money on. What we're seeing is that the banks are typically, and whether it's retail or whether it's offices, it's almost the same thing. They're requiring a significant amount of pre-leasing. And the catch here is that you're not going to get anyone on the office sector side to sign a pre-lease for a building that's going to be built in 2 years' time at best. It goes back to what Milica was saying about construction time. Here, it's just too uncertain. So the whole idea of pre-leasing becomes an issue. Also, the banks, when it comes to the terms they're willing to offer, they're not offering interesting terms. They're going to charge a higher interest rate. They're going to be more difficult in terms of their demands. And it goes back to, if the development's not easy in Serbia, it's going to be difficult to convince an international developer to build a building here when they know how to do it in Romania or Bulgaria or even Zagreb. So there's a whole, I mean, it sounds negative, but there's a few issues like this that right now are making it difficult to get a new office building or even a shopping center off the ground.
Just one more question on the Boško, did you have some comments on the development on the office side?
I would just add on looks basically that those are really, yes, they are negative, but also the positive is that the prices are higher than in the region. So if really somebody wants to come in and do something, they really have a value for it. You know, the office rents are higher than anywhere in the region, and also for retail. So, you know, the payoff is there. That somebody just has to come in and take a risk.
Yeah, I mean, in Warsaw, I think there's something like 5 permits now issued for towers in the city of Warsaw, which I know one of them is, 100,000 square meter tower with all the surroundings. So, there's a lot that can come onto the market in some of these capital cities, and it seems like in Belgrade, if you build something, you're pretty secure. No one else is going to build anything anytime soon. Is that correct? Yeah. So I guess that's why AFI and GTC are probably and CAEMO are doing so well, because they have the deep pockets to come in and do it. Just another question on maybe sort of the outlying areas and opportunities for office, and part of a lot of these BPO companies and shared service companies are starting to open in Southeastern Europe, Central Eastern Europe. Do you see an opportunity for developers working with sort of those kind of companies opening more office space here, or taking, because they usually take 1,000, 2,000, 10,000 square meters of space when they're some of these BPO companies are coming online. Are you getting any requests for that, or any comments from these kind of companies interested in the region, or interested in?
I mean, I can add on that. Basically, yes, we are definitely experiencing more and more, because Serbia as a country has a lot of educated people, and the labor cost is very low. So I think that just in last, I think 2 years, the 2 major ones opened, Saitel and NCR. So, and I think that recently we have a couple more looking at Serbia, and I think that we have, again, pretty good language skills for the country, and probably one of the best in the region. So I think this is definitely something that they can look at it, because this can really help out to developers to build, definitely. So.
Yeah, and some of the outlying cities, of course, it's not really good for the capital to. I mean, usually usually the labor's too expensive in the capital, but the outlying cities usually can do pretty well because good labor skills at cheaper prices.
Well, what's happening at the moment in Serbia, they usually tend to opt for Belgrade, unfortunately. But that's the situation. Even Belgrade compared to the region, the salaries in Serbia are lower, and people are very educated, and it's quite different. We don't have like 80 universities. You have a few cities where you have the universities, and basically where you have the choice of going to in terms of education, language skills, and everything else. So
some good opportunities there throughout the whole.
Basically, after Belgrade, a lot of companies opt for Novi Sad. That's the
there's been a lot of investment already there.
Yeah.
And again, if there's any questions from the audience, please feel free to ask them anytime. We're happy to take them. Well, probably I think just move on to retail a bit, unless there's something else we need to cover under office. But just one other thing on office. It seems like still because you mentioned 19%. Is this considering kind of the B-class office space as well, or
A and B?
A and B, yeah.
What we actually calculate in as let's say CBRE, we do A and B together.
Together, right?
But let's say in New Belgrade Class A, we did some calculations quite recently. It's around 10 to 11%. So it's
some opportunities to build probably more Class A office space, I would imagine.
Yeah.
And is that what you're getting the most requests for?
I mean, let me just add, basically what this crisis did recently is that the price of Class A went down dramatically from like 2-3 years from before, and basically the difference between A and B was never smaller, let's say. And basically I think a lot of these clients are now looking, maybe they used to be Class B clients a couple of years ago, but now they're definitely going to Class A because of the prices went down. So I think that most of the requests, basically, I'm sure that all three companies are getting are really for Class A, especially from the international companies. So.
And especially what actually we are forced to take into Class B, I guess it's a little bit lower than Class B when you go out. It's, you know.
So if the prices are the same, George, I guess the service charges are a bit higher on Class B, correct? I mean, that seems to be the...
Okay, I will get back to this subject quickly, but just to round up maybe this previous discussion about difficulties. I was the president of the Real Estate Committee of Foreign Investors Council. Andrew Pearson here is now the new president. So just to round up this previous discussion, so because we didn't name probably the main problem, which is then giving all these problems like bureaucracy, administration. So this is the law on construction, and I can tell you that since we are writing this white book every year with this market pillars of development, one of those pillars is also the real estate market. But I can tell you, because I was there for 3 years, so after this adoption of this new construction law in 2009, this was, I think, the main issue that blocked some new developments. Because if you look at these construction permits in the previous period, like you cannot even put them on the fingers of one hand. So everything stopped. Because in this committee, the majority of the clients, the majority of the members are the companies that has some interest in real estate market. So even investors, even these servicing companies like us, insurance companies, banks, etc. So we were fighting for 3 years, and even this 4th years, we are still fighting to change this construction law to ease, let's say, this possibility of construction and new investments, but we didn't have unfortunately any success. And okay, so regarding service charge, I can tell you that okay, A and B, it's a different type of quality, different type of equipment you have on the building, etc. But the difference of the service charge is really small, not even worth mentioning. So we all know that this service charge goes from like almost €3 per square meters above of course the rent. So this number is not depending so much if the building is A or B class.
Okay, and then just going on to...
Can I add
yeah,
something?
sure. Yeah, absolutely.
It seems that we sounded, let's say, 80% negative on this subject, and I'm actually not. Because I can tell you that from what we have recorded as the take-up in Q1 this year, we had an increase of 67% compared to 2012, which is, let's say, a significant increase of take-up. CBRE has recorded up to now, let's say H1 this year, we've leased almost the same amount of square meters as for the whole 2012. So in those terms, we are actually looking forward to someone building new office buildings, because it is picking up. So to summarize, I see everything in a very positive way.
So is that because, and this is a question for all the agents, is that because your clients are actually doing better and needing better space or bigger space? Or is it new companies coming in? What's the...
Let's say from all of our clients, majority of transactions are the companies who actually exist on the market already. There are some newcomers, but let's say we have a few requests, but it's more companies who are actually here already and have some kind of.
And are they expanding, or are they signing the same leases, or are they generally growing or shrinking, or?
I haven't noticed any shrinking, which is good because it was noticeable a few years back. I haven't noticed any shrinking. I have noticed that everyone is talking about 10 euros per square meter, which is absolutely amazing. You know, they usually come to your office and say, yeah, we can find. But it's not the case. Then you, of course, you need to educate them in those terms and actually tell them what the prices on the market are.
Right.
But there were some growing, some, let's say, lease renewals and things like that. So, to summarize, it's the good things are happening.
And Luke, what do you see in the clients that you're dealing with? Are there companies expanding in Serbia or in the region? Do they need more space?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would agree with what Milica said, that there's a lot of it where people are expanding a little bit. The other thing we're seeing is people upgrading their space. So companies that, say, in the crisis moved down to B-class space or went to a building more on a price point, they're now looking that things are better and their lease is coming up. They're looking to move back into what we'd call A-class space. So even though they might only be taking an extra 50, an extra 100 square meters, their rental costs are going up and it's pushing the vacancy down in the A-class space. So I think we're also seeing a migration of companies moving from B and C-class space kind of one or two steps up in terms of quality.
Okay. Boško, any comments on the?
Not really. I mean, both of them really cover it. I mean, I agree completely with Milica and Luke, and we experience a lot of lease renegotiations, some new market entries. But I think that I have to stress out that new market entries are still missing. We still need new companies coming in, and I think hopefully this will be the trend in the future, because right now a lot of these transactions are basically existing companies who are either growing or just renegotiating the lease. So.
And just going on to retail, which seems to be a huge opportunity here. Pretty low amounts of let's say shopping center space and shopping mall space. I guess we'll just start with, in talking to retailers that are actually here with their corporate operations, they all seem to be very happy. When I'm talking to the franchise ones, there's a mixture, because some of them just don't have the ability to do what they're supposed to do, what the corporate clients are supposed to be doing. But it seems like the corporate retailers in general are quite happy on the market. Boško or Luke, if you make some comments on how you see the retail market here or expanding.
I think honestly the retail is probably maybe with industrial also is one of the definitely areas where there is the biggest future for Serbia. And when you look at Belgrade as a city, we have really only 3 shopping centers for 2 million people. Average rents between 25 to 29 euros per square meter, which is still higher than anywhere in the region. And I think talking to all the retailers, they're all doing quite well. I agree. So. People are keen to shop here, and I really don't know any projects that are not doing well. Some better, some worse, but generally they're happy.
And for international or for newcomers building shopping centers or new developers, is there an opportunity for them here? We've heard about the problems with getting the permits, getting the proper land and the ownership of the land. Is it more of a local business, or do you see, let's say, reasonable potential for international new to the market coming in and building shopping centers or building retail parks?
Well, I think that the real investment has already happened in a sense in retail. When you look at the pipeline of the projects that are scheduled to start, complete, however you want to call it, a lot of the best land plots and a lot of the best projects are already on paper. The challenge now, going back to what we talked about before, is largely on the financing side. So the problem we're having is that there's a lot of good projects. They can't get the banks to take the risk to back them. So again, we're going into situations where you need significant pre-leasing. And the international brands, although they've been successful here, the ones that are not on the market, we're almost in a catch-22 where they don't want to come to Serbia right now because there's not enough locations for them to come, but we can't build enough locations because we can't get them to sign a lease. So what I think all of us are hoping is that one or two retail projects, good quality, likely internationally built projects get off the ground, and it'll really start creating some momentum because we've got a lot of demand, but we just don't know where to necessarily put them. You're seeing retailers, international retailers that would typically be in major shopping centers are now having to go to retail parks, which they would never do as kind of their first or second entry into any other market. But they like Serbia so much, they're even willing to do that now. So if we can get a few good projects started, I think we're going to have a good run for the next few years.
So how are they going to get these projects financed at the end? I mean, I saw, I think on every developer's balance sheet or on every developer's business plan 2 years ago, you always saw somewhere, Bank of Cyprus financing this bid or someone else financing that bid. Greece was financing a lot of projects in the region. So who's actually going to finance these in the end? Are they going to be self-financed by just the big guys coming in, putting a lot more equity in?
I don't think they can be self-financed. I think a lot of the projects have already invested so much in terms of land acquisitions, et cetera, development costs, that they don't necessarily have the equity to put in another, 5-6 million plus euros. I think you're going to see a lot of bank syndications, which complicates the process, but hopefully that's the way we're going to make it work, is you're going to have to get 2 or 3 banks involved in the financing, which will drag the process out. It'll make it more difficult. But I do think that that's where it's going to end up happening. Again, it's going to move up the requirements on pre-leasing, but the trend is we're actually seeing more pre-leasing activity. No one's necessarily signing a binding term sheet, but they're willing to at least put their name down on an LOI in kind of key terms. So I think it's going to be more complicated, but I think you're going to see banks, say from Austria, from even a little bit from Germany, and still some from Greece, that will step in kind of through their local subsidiaries here and backed up by the parent company.
Yeah, I mean, I talked to one of the directors at Bank of Greece, and he said, we've got money to lend. We're just not lending it in Greece, so we're lending it in SEE region, and Serbia was really number 2 on their list of real estate projects to lease into. I'm not sure what percentage they were looking at, but I'm sure it was, obviously but they are liquid and have some money to lend in the region. Now, is there any recent projects where local banks have come in? I know I've talked to Alpha Bank too, and they're also quite open to doing. They tell me they're quite open to doing deals, and then are any of them even close to coming together with a developer and actually taking some of the risk?
Are there any bankers in the room? Okay, well, no.
Well, yeah, right. Answers that wrong question.
I mean, I think that a lot of them are saying that they're open, but when it comes down to the financial terms, either they're not willing to put in enough, or they're asking for too much. So I think the amount of banks that are actually maybe going to do a financing, I'd put it at 2 to 3, at least for the first project, that might actually be able to stretch to make it work.
So developers then are really looking for more investors, someone at mezzanine level finance, and really then maybe refinancing it afterwards.
Yeah, and the other thing we're seeing is that a lot of the people that have projects are now coming to, I'm sure, all of us and asking, well, do you have someone that wants to invest equity in my project? So they're looking for joint venture partners to kind of bridge the gap, to step in on the development side right now, give them enough money so that they can trigger the financing from the banks. It's not easy. I don't see a ton of people lining up to buy into a project right now. And the typical challenge is the developers that have the project probably bought the land at a far greater price than what it's worth now.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And in a lot of cases, retailers are asking for concessions going into shopping centers, as opposed to, let's say in the olden days, they would throw in a bit of money to get the development going. So, I mean, is that the same situation here where retailers are sitting back saying, well, do the whole fit out for me and I'll move in, or are they a bit more aggressive?
It depends. I mean, I think the big retailers, yes, they're still kind of taking that approach. They want a lot of concessions to come in. It's not quite as bad as it was, say, a year ago. I think they're realizing they need to get into Serbia. They're being a bit more flexible. But we're still seeing the demands from the retailers. They want a reason to come into Serbia, and they're expecting the landlords to give them that reason.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And hoping and assuming that'll bring the banks, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Boško, are you seeing any investors, local investors that are interested in getting involved in some of these projects as let's say, as the banks maybe aren't there to lend the money?
I mean, this Voždovac Stadium Center, which was recently built, was basically it's a local investor together, of course, with a foreign investor, but he was the driving force behind it. And the project is completed, and I believe majority leased, so it happened. So it was.
You may do another one, yeah.
Yeah, so you never know.
And on retailers, are you getting requests from retailers looking for space? Does that seem to be a kind of buoyant or interesting area for retailers looking? I know in was it Beatrice Morton? I always see her at the airport dragging 2 or 3 retailers around with her to all kinds of places. So is she bringing retailers here looking around the region? Or?
Well, basically, yeah, Beatrice is running the region for us, and she's well known in that field. And on and off, she's coming to Serbia, talking, and she's helping us a lot. But again, I think a lot of these investors, basically, when you go to MAPIC, and last year, for example, the only 2 countries they were discussing were Poland and Serbia, because Poland is so well developed, and Serbia is so undeveloped. So I think that there's a huge potential for us.
Yeah, and in Poland, where I think you have more retailers closing some stores and strategically reopening in other newer malls or something. In Serbia, I think there's no sense in closing any, just opening more, right?
Yeah.
If you talk about the figures, we have something like 140 square meters of retail space per 1,000 inhabitants, which is around the region is 475 square meters, so it's like 3.5 times less than that. So there's definitely room for building retail projects here. So, and I remember 7 or 8 years ago when everyone was talking, even H&M had discussions of coming to Serbia, and it was like, they don't come to the markets which are not in the EU, everything, and now we have H&M coming to Serbia, even though we're not a member of the EU. And
greed always wins out, which is good. Yeah, if it's profitable, well, in a few of the big shoe companies,
everyone else is here. I think that they realize they
don't want to miss it. Yeah, and a lot of the big retailers that are here already, I've talked to, and especially the shoe companies, and they're all doing great business, and they're kind of happy that a lot of their competitors are not here, of course, so they're selling out. Just going on to industrial, and we can touch on hotel if anyone's interested in hotels as well, because I think that's a good, potentially interesting subject. But going on to industrial, Boško, can you make a few comments on that, how you see the market? I mean, it seems like, almost every country I go to, they always say, oh, industrial should be great here, we're the gateway to somewhere, right? And they've got some roads, so, it seems, a few of the bigger logistics companies have said to me, hey, we'd like to go there, but there's no industrial parks, it's going to take a long time. And then they just forget about it and look somewhere else because this isn't being developed.
Serbia as a country has probably the best location in the region, and we are also keen to have this service line really extended within the company, because industrial is definitely something that can be a future for us. At this moment, you might have 1 or 2 true logistics centers, from which half of it is most likely owner occupied, and some of them are just fully leased. So the market is not mature yet for industrial, and we are truly hoping this will happen, because there is no really reason why other countries in the region have it and Serbia doesn't.
So when you're, and Luke, also for you, if you're talking to Panattoni or Prologis or one of the bigger industrial, or was it Point Park Properties, they're kind of pan-European. When you talk to them about Serbia, I mean, what comes up? Or about the region, even for that matter, because I don't think they're here.
No, they're not.
Yeah.
I mean, the funny thing is they're always interested. They always want to talk about what's going on. But the feedback is that they won't start here until they have a certain amount of tenants. So they want to know that if they're going to come to Serbia, that they can move with their tenants in here and kind of have a secure project to start. I think that we will see some of them come in. But the major ones, again, I don't think it goes back to the point that they don't want to come because we don't have the infrastructure, but we're not building the infrastructure because they don't want to come. I do think that you'll see some of them move in, especially I think as the manufacturing sector continues to pick up. And even as hopefully retail picks up, because retail can be a strong driver of kind of warehousing logistics, if we can figure out a way in the next few years to create Serbia as kind of a logistics hub, because you've got the ports of Greece and also Turkey effectively meeting in the middle of Serbia, but yet we don't really have the infrastructure to take advantage of that. So I think they'll move in. It's going to be a sales job, I think, on the part of agencies, the Foreign Investment Council, SIEPA, et cetera, to help them understand why and to make sure they have a good reason. But I think it will happen.
Now, is there let's say, a basic network for, let's say, a retailer like H&M to come in and say, we want 15 shops around the country? Is there already a basic logistics network that they can use, or is it really going to be a fight for them to get the logistics?
It'll be a fight. That's part of the problem, is you've got some good logistics parks, but you couldn't say that there's a network. There'd obviously be hubs in southern Serbia close to Niš, and then there's some around Belgrade. But apart from that, and you're really only covering the one major highway that's going north to south, there's not, when you get outside of that, they don't have the infrastructure to really be secure that everything can be handled by one company.
And that seems, Boško, but that seems like a great opportunity for local and international potential investors to actually build a little network if anything, for retailers. As that's sort of half the business for these logistics guys. I mean, I don't know, how do you guys see it? It seems like it could be a good opportunity for international or for local investors.
I mean, again, I agree with Luke. I mean, it's definitely a huge opportunity, but they really have to, step up and do something. Really, it's there's so much land available on the good locations, and I don't think you can find good land in around Belgrade anywhere else in the region. It's close to highway. It's most of it is fully commercialized. So just somebody has to come in, finance, and again, the pre-lease is the problem, and most of them are looking for this. And again, the big tenants are still not here to do it. So
right, and also you mentioned manufacturing. Is that? I mean, that's obviously seems to be either light manufacturing or assembly. That's always a big part of these logistics parks, and I think even products going maybe not so much into Greece, but definitely into Turkey and abroad. It seems to be a good place to set up kind of local or light manufacturing with rail, with the Danube right going through the whole country. I mean, is there people looking at that as an option for export even from Europe?
Well, we are I think the only country, for example, that has a free trade agreement with Russia, and I think we also have with Turkey. So there is a really huge opportunity for those markets, and most of this manufacturing is really happening in central Serbia now with Fiat coming in, and actually we experience a lot of work in Kragujevac these days for these manufacturers who are actually supporting Fiat. So I think we as a country need a few more of those investments, and I think that the logistics will definitely then start up.
Yeah, I imagine Fiat's bringing in 500 other little companies, or not little, big companies, servicing
quite big
them, yes?
companies.
Yeah, I would imagine. So this trade agreement is working then. I mean, you're getting, let's say, benefits from it. Yeah.
Yeah, and us as a country, and I think also companies who export from Serbia are definitely there.
Great. And of course, any questions from the audience? We're always happy to take them. Just raise your hand. Edward, if we have a microphone.
I'll speak now because of the translation.
Hi, thank you. Thank you first thing for this overview on the different segment of the real estate market. I've understood that regarding offices, there's a lack of companies coming from abroad or companies increasing their needs and needing space. But regarding the retail sector, I just wanted, as advisors, what would you recommend to a foreign brand where to open a store? A shopping mall or high streets? You've only got one or two high streets, but you've only got three malls. So that's the first question. And then another question, probably a third one on hotels, but another one on logistic parks. Because if I was an investor, this is definitely where I would expand, because it's offering a good return on invest, and today probably the best one. But you've mentioned the issues regarding infrastructures. If you could say a few words on legislation, corruption, or if it's hard, because there's a need, because you've mentioned this strategic point that you're in between. It's the cross border of many countries here.
Okay, I can start with the first question. When it comes to retail, if I had to recommend a brand, and we're basing it off of the stock today, my feeling is you should always have your flagship store. And I think here you've got the opportunity, either you do it in one of the shopping centers, and then I think you've got to take a high street location in Belgrade, probably Knez Mihajlova. Your options are fairly limited. There's a few other secondary high streets you could do, but if you're one of the big brands, there's not a lot of choices. I do think that once you've kind of got one or two city center locations secured, I think the retail parks are a good option in terms of price point for them. Even the other opportunity we've seen is some of them will go to the retail parks first because the risk is so much lower. They can get familiar with the country, how to do the logistics, etc. And you know what? They realize if it doesn't work, they're not out as much money because the rents are lower, etc. The startup costs are lower. So for me, depending on the retailer, if you're a big brand and you want to make a splash, you've got to be in at least one shopping center and you've got to have one good high street location. If you're maybe a secondary brand and you're trying to find out the market, then I think you can open in a retail park first up, and then use that as a stepping stone to something bigger when you get more comfortable. Sorry.
Hi. Just going back to the office market. I think the office market's really going to grow here if we see outsourcing coming into Serbia, which I don't really think we're seeing much of at the moment. How would you sell Serbia to a company if, and this is to everybody by the way, how would you sell Serbia to a company if they're looking to outsource compared to say somewhere like Sofia where they would rent at €7 or Bucharest at 10 or Budapest at 9 when we're talking about office rents in Serbia at 12?
Can I answer that? Those kind of companies don't tend to look only at the rental rates. That's the whole point of the issue. We've had companies who are looking at Bulgaria, Czech Republic, Poland, and of course we do know, Boško will confirm it, that Bulgaria is definitely lower than Serbia and let's say significantly low rents. But that's not the only thing that they are looking at. In terms, if they were to look only at the rental rates, we wouldn't have that many newcomers to the market. They look at the salaries, they look at the educational level of the people and the rents. Rents are not number one.
But then if salaries here are higher than Bulgaria, Romania, and the language skills are the same?
They're not the same. We are a lot ahead than Bulgaria and Romania. And I mean, we've spoken to the, let's say, decision-making people, and there was a reason why they actually decided to come to Belgrade. They were looking at the whole region. They tend to look at, let's say, 4 to 5 countries, around Serbia, and we've had 2 or 3 companies opening an office saying that it's, they find it, let's say, very strange that we have less accent when we speak English than Bulgarians, Romanians, Hungarians, Czechs, and around else. Our salaries are not higher than Czech Republic, and I mean they're actually a lot lower. And the people tend to be, they usually have college degrees, the ones that work for those kind of companies, which is not the case in other countries. So, I mean, we had meetings with one of those companies like a week or 10 days ago, and they actually said that the rental rate is number 3 on their list. So,
well, the other thing is the government here, I think,
incentivizes
companies fairly well, say, than compared to Bulgaria right now. If you stack it up country by country, we do have some of the best incentives in the region for new entrants. Sorry, I think I missed your second question answering it.
The other one on logistic parks.
Okay, sorry, can you just repeat exactly, because...
As you mentioned, it was a really strategic area here, and that could help, and it's a great opportunity for
many companies like Prologis and all the others. But why you've mentioned it, but why really they're not here? Is it because of only infrastructure, or because of regulations and the state not doing those kind of incentives they're doing for offices?
I think that's part of it, but it's almost secondary. I think the larger issue is more getting them comfortable with the market, because Serbia, I think for a lot of them, is so foreign. As I said, with some other developers, they've never been here, they don't understand the market. Honestly, some of them, if you ask them where Serbia was on a map, might not be able to point it out without a name out there. I mean, so for us, it's going to be much more an education around the reasons to come here than it is the specifics around that stuff. I mean, they've been operating in I guess, emerging markets for years, so they'll always be able to figure out how to make it work on industrial. But I think for them, they need to kind of have a better idea of Serbia and why to come here before they'll start doing it.
Okay, maybe a bit on the hotel market. Anyone, if we're just a few comments on that, and then anything. I know we're not real. Probably the hotel market always seems to be kind of this redheaded stepchild for agencies. Yeah, they're kind of like, it's not really real estate. It's sort of real estate.
We have a department in
Do you? Yeah. Okay, we'll call them and put them on the speaker. But or maybe another thing that we just would like to touch on a bit is so any comments on hotel, even from the audience, opportunities there? All right, so let's move on to. I didn't think there would be, but
No, but you can see. I mean,
people just complain there's not good ones.
A lot of hotels, openings have been announced. I mean, in those kind of terms, but let's say all of the details of the hotel market. Honestly, I mean,
yeah,
I
sure.
cannot comment.
It's all in the hospitality departments of these. And just because we have a couple of agents that are doing residential, maybe we'll spend a couple minutes on residential, as this is a good generally an opportunity for local investors, and also it'd be interesting to hear how usually if the residential market's growing, that obviously helps. That's obviously indication that the rest of the market's growing. And Milica, your company's doing residential,
Yeah,
correct?
we are actually doing residential sales and leases.
Of new projects or secondary
Mostly,
markets as well?
In terms of sales, we tend to do mostly the projects we have exclusivity for, and those are new kind of developments and everything. They're mostly, let's say, what everyone is usually interested in are smaller scale projects. I mean, okay, the government is building a few projects which are, let's say, very large scale projects, but we do notice an increase in the demand. More sales have happened. I think that we have something national insurance for loans association. They
Some incentives to buy new.
They actually announced they saw an increase of 22% compared to beginning of last year, and still that's not the, let's say, correct figure, because most of the buyers are actually not, they're cash buyers in Serbia. You have more cash buyers than.
Okay, so
even you have even, let's say, a bigger increase in those ones. I mean, this is only the people who are actually taking the loans. That's what they can account for.
So there is a mortgage loan, let's say, credit that's actually working, and they're lending money, and they're getting paid back, and it's happening. And Luke, do you see it, because you guys are doing
cash buyers? I don't know how, but
And Luke, you have a pretty reasonable department as well, doing residential and how do you see the market? Is your department growing? Is it, let's say, developing the right direction?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely better than last year. We've seen a big pickup year over year. Actually, where we're seeing a lot of growth as well is on the leasing side. I'm not honestly exactly sure of the reason why, but we've just seen a lot more activity. We're also seeing more international companies moving more people into the market, which I think is a very good sign. And they also always require leases. The other thing we're tracking is the average, I guess, costs that people are willing to budget for their leases, and we're seeing that improve year over year. People are willing to take more expensive leases. I mean, not significantly, but generally over the course of the last 12 months, the requests have become slightly bigger, and the price that people are willing to pay per square meter is getting better. So I think it's a good sign. I want to wait another 6 months before I call it a trend, but I think in general, both on the sales and the leasing side, things are definitely better overall than last year.
Yeah, great. Okay, I think we're time to wrap up the panel. So I'd want to, if there's any other questions, we'll take them right now. if there's not, I sort of really want to wrap up the panel and get everyone's, if there's any sort of comment from any of the panelists, of course, any angles you think we've missed, any final pearls of wisdom you would like to give us, and Boško, we'll start at your end and work this way. So any bits that you think we may have missed or
No, I think we basically cover all the segments of the business these days in Serbia, and I think that we can definitely see that retail is the future here, at least next couple of years, and then also office market is definitely picking up from last year, and I fully agree with Milic said that there's a huge increase in take-up from last year, and then this is a good sign for us as a country and our business in general. So, and again, as a native Belgrade, let's say the Belgrade there, how to say it, I definitely see that there is a lack of residential in the city, and I think the good projects with institutional developers will definitely sell well. So.
Okay, George?
Just want to say also not to be demotivated, maybe as the previous discussion were, since we are living from the, let's say, owners and their success of filling their properties, I just have to say that we are really satisfied with the latest developments, because we are living, basically, we are paid according to the occupancy rate, and this occupancy rate is growing. So regarding us as a service company, we are really satisfied how the market goes.
Yeah, great, thank you. Licia?
What I actually wanted to tell you, I think we had one of the, let's say, questions when we received all of the questions for this panel. It's like, what is the best investment, or some kind of question. I think that Serbian market is such that if you position your product right in terms of location and pricing, it will be a success story. I mean, you need to, let's say, think carefully, but in every segment of the market, there's room if you
Big opportunities.
Yes,
yeah? Mm-hmm.
yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. And
I think I've probably talked enough today, so I don't really have any other pearls of wisdom. I think that the general sentiment that we've seen here and then across the region when I've been at other conferences is people are looking more and more at Serbia from the other countries. So I think it's a positive sign. I think this year will be better, and hopefully next year will be better than that.
yeah, I mean, that's, yeah, good. Yeah, absolutely will be. No, I think, and also from our side, I mean, we're publishing magazines and publishing news on the region, and I'd say in the last 18 months we've had more and more, let's say, our clients also pushing us to report more on what's going on. So that's one of the reasons we're here again, and that we're pushing it. So any sort of news, any information you have, feel free to send it through to us. We'll be happy to put it in our next magazines or events. And I guess, I'd just like to thank our panelists for doing such a great job. If we can have a round of applause for them. And of course, Alexander, the organizer, for putting together such a great event. Thank you very much for that.